I am so excited to sit here and talk with you today. This is everybody, my honorable guest, Jodi Lemons, and she is firefighter, EMT, military, first responder from Air Force to Army, and now the founder of Last Call Ranch and Retreat. And recently, Jodi became a member of our Sacred Warrior Fellowship and attended an incredible ceremony that we had together that I had the chance of facilitating in Fort Pierce, Florida at the Coherence Retreat Center. And today we are just going to dive into your story, what brought you to us and what's transpired during and after ceremony. But welcome, Jodi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is so great to be here with you guys. This is
Yeah,
truly an honor.
it really is. And I was scouting out your Facebook page today for Last Call Ranch and Retreat. It just looks like a magical place where
Mm.
animals and people can come and find a serene moment to themselves to maybe perhaps feel loved and right at home. I'd love to jump in a little bit and talk about your vision for Last Call Ranch and Retreat and maybe how that came about for you in this season.
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much. So Last Call Ranch and Retreat is it's a nonprofit, a 501(c)(3) that was literally just established 11/11 of 25. So on Veterans Day, we stood it up and really just looking to bridge a gap, provide a good safe space for veterans, first responders, and their families to go. I really want to bridge that gap with first responders. There's so many resources out there that sadly a lot of veterans don't even know about. But the first responders, I'm really having a hard time finding the network for them, the resource for them. I know I suffered in silence for decades because I didn't really know where to go or who to talk to. And I certainly didn't want to be, the one that had an issue or even maybe even talk about something. So Last Call Ranch and Retreat is kind of that place that no words are really needed. Your presence, just being there with the animals alone is so peaceful, so beautiful. And then, we also have a lot of volunteers and peer support members that are there, to talk with people and to work with people and to just be there and see them where they're at.
Yeah,
So,
that's beautiful. You and I had a chance to talk yesterday, and you spoke of how challenging it was for yourself to even get to a place where you were able to start talking about your struggles.
yeah.
And we unpack that a little bit because you have a really extensive history when it comes to service. And I'd love for you to kind of take us all the way back. I mean, you said you're fourth generation firefighter. Tell me a little bit about what that was like growing up for
Mhm.
you and how that kind of laid the foundation for the things that you would end up working through during ceremony and as you're developing your nonprofit.
Oh gosh, yes. There's a lot to unpack there still. Even now, this is all still very surreal because it is so new. So to talk about this and the things that have been, finally just brought up and out after, 40 some odd years of internalizing and compartmentalizing everything. So to process this all with you in real time is wild and it's beautiful and it's very nerve sighted, like Wiz likes to say, right?
Nerve sighted, yeah.
Nerve sighted.
Nervous and excited.
Yeah, and, so but it's also very intimidating too to get so real and so vulnerable, um, but this is, I think, where we know the work is coming from. So growing up, my parents divorced when I was very young. I lived with my mom, excuse me, and she was, it was a typical Irish Catholic family. I literally was the black sheep in the family. My dad is a Cuban refugee who came over during the Cold War, and then he he became a Marine, went to Vietnam, but then he joined the fire department when he came back. And my father, my grandfather, my great grandfathers both were all firefighters and military service members. So I grew up when I would spend the weekends with my dad, we were at the firehouse or, he belonged to a volunteer fire department. So we would respond to the scenes or to the calls, and I would get to go with him. So that was very normal for me to just be in the station and be a part of the kitchen table, so to speak, where all the stuff. I mean, I know they downplayed a lot of it because I was a kid growing up, but I later learned what the kitchen table was really all about. But it was an honor to grow up in that environment and brotherhood so early
Right.
on to see, how well everyone worked together.
So there's also the downside to those experiences that you had, coming up in a military upbringing, and that was having to learn early about stuffing your emotions, right?
Sure, sure, on both
And
sides of that aisle, right.
you what?
On both sides of that aisle, so we had, my father who was, the veteran, the Marine Corps veteran from Vietnam, who was also a first responder, and then my mom's side of the family, the Irish side that was, there was a lot of alcoholism, there was a lot of codependency, so that was both personally and professionally, growing up. How do you learn? You get into survival mode. You put everything away, especially in the work field. You're the professional. People are
Right.
not calling you because they're having a good day, right?
Yeah.
So you better put that away. You have a job to do. You go, you do it. And then a lot of times, especially with the first responders, that people aren't realizing you're gonna clear that scene no matter what that was, and you're gonna go to another one, right? So there is no time even to really decompress, right? The 911
Yeah.
calls keep coming. The calls, still need to be responded to, and it doesn't matter what that call entails. That could, include having a partner go down, be injured. You could lose your partner. We've lost a lot of guys over the years, and you know, the job has to go. The mission
Yeah.
has to continue.
You have to you have to be able to button it up and keep going.
Right.
And we know, scientifically speaking, that suppression leads to a plethora of
Right.
things that we so many people struggle with.
Right.
And I know that after you signed up for the Air Force, I mean, that was in 2010.
Army was 2010. I switched from the Air Force to the Army, which
So
and
when did you join the Air Force?
I went into the Air Force in '06. I was a late bloomer, and
Yeah.
it was '05, '06 when I was going in. It was a delayed entry program in multiple fronts.
Mhm.
I was already working for the Department of Justice at that time, and I thought, what better opportunity than to join the Air National Guard? And I could essentially have, dual pensions and retirements with the government and the state. And yeah, so I wanted to go into the fire service with them. Did 4 years with the Air National Guard.
Wow. And then like you said before that, you were with the DOJ and you had even been over to Ground Zero. You were
I
deployed over
was.
there. Yeah.
Yes, our engine
Incredible.
company was deployed to Ground Zero for, at the time, what we thought was going to be search and rescue, wa- as we know, obviously turned recovery. So,
Right. Wow.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely incredible, your journey. You've been through a lot. And you went from the Air Force to the Army, but tell us a little bit about some of the unfortunate things that happened during that time. You've got some incredible injuries that you've been working through.
Yes. So uh, the, I think the hardest part to work through was it wasn't it wasn't what we did, so to speak. I loved my job. I loved doing what I did. I loved who I did it with. I loved serving our community. I love serving our country. The struggles that I really had with that was what we couldn't do, you know,
Yeah.
especially when it came to Ground Zero. That was our brothers. and our sisters and our friends and our family and our neighbors. We were there. We were just 30 minutes, 40 minutes out. So that part really sits with you. We all have our calls that really resonate and get stuck with you. That was one of those things that you just, how do you wrap your head around something like that? There was no SOP. There was nobody wrote a procedure of how to respond to something like that. So it was just chaos, organized chaos in every direction. So to process that, but I didn't even really deal with any of that until the physical injuries, and being physically injured in a training accident put the kibosh on everything with the army, and essentially everything. I was medically retired. Um,
Wow.
that physical injury ripped the proverbial bandage off of on all those underlying issues that were stuffed in,
Right.
right? So
But you were
I
keeping yourself busy. You were busy enough to not have to think about the areas that you were struggling internally. So the
right,
injury was really the catalyst for you to now have to
right,
face all of these things all at once because you didn't have all those distractions. You were kind of, as you said before, you were grounded, right? At that
right,
point. So it was almost
right.
like a halt in a lot of ways.
Oh, for sure. I was
Yeah.
literally and metaphorically grounded, so
Mm.
they saw a rapid decline in my morale, because I used work as my vice, so
Right.
command saw this NCO that was, hard charging and very outgoing, and I tanked. And it was like, once you read that you're non-retainable, non-deployable, and my unit was in Al Assad, Iraq, it was like, we have work to do, and I'm stuck on med hold, and that's like the worst place anybody wants to be. So, my command saw a rapid decline in my morale, and I was referred to behavioral health. Did not want to be there, did not want to be a part of that. It took a long time to finally start talking. And then, sure enough, as soon as I did, I got labeled with PTSD, and there goes my flight status. So,
Wow.
I was a flight medic at that time, and I really needed that.
Yeah.
And there started that cyclical ball. And of course, everybody, my maiden name was Gomez. So everybody, they're like, well, I saw what happened to Mez, and the wall goes up, and everybody shuts down. So, that was that stigma associated with behavioral health and talking and even just giving the bare minimums, it literally took me out. So that was hard, and then, there lied the rest. It was cyclical, the disassociation, the anger. You lose your identity,
Yeah.
your sense of self, like, who are you outside of the uniform?
Wow.
um yeah.
And what type of direction were you given as far as getting well, getting better?
So the directions, I mean, they're protocols that they have to abide by and follow, so there's a lot of boxes that need to be checked. And so it was, going to all these different forms of therapy: individual therapy, group therapy, CBD, or I'm sorry, CBT, DBT, I don't know, exposure treatment therapy. I mean, I literally checked every single box that they had me on, and the amount of drugs and narcotics and SSRIs and stuff, and if this doesn't work, then take more. And if this doesn't work, try this one. And it's just, you're just so all over the place that you get to a point where you're unrecognizable.
Wow.
You don't know who you are anymore, in or outside of the uniform.
Right, I was gonna say, what did that do to your, social interactions, to your relationships?
Yeah, well, the relationships tanked.
Mm.
Social, I used to be a very social, outgoing person. So I became, very withdrawn. I didn't like to, I still don't like to go out with a lot of people. I'm so much better now, but big crowds was always a thing. I was very hyper vigilant. Um, and what has, really been pointed out to me, and I see so much now from different perspectives, how angry and pissed off I was all the time. I don't even know at who or why, but I was just so angry. Um, so that was a big part of that too.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to what you discovered about that in ceremony. But first, let's talk about how you were first inspired to take the journey with plant medicine, because I know that we were not your first opportunity to explore alternative medicine. So tell me a little bit about how you came to that crossroad where you were introduced to the idea of exploring alternative medicine, and what did that look like for you? How did you get there?
Yeah, I started originally with medical marijuana.
Okay.
I was so hesitant and even skeptical to even try that, right? The stigmas associated with that.
Exactly.
And that was another part of being isolated too, right? Because it was like, oh God, Joe's gonna, smoking pot and getting stupid stoned, and it was
Right.
the furthest thing from that, right? But learning just to even like what microdosing was, learn how to go back to pharmacology, even from like medic days, and find what works for you and titrate to effect. And that helped me mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually on so many levels. And it was like,
Yeah.
man, there's a lot to be said here. So that really started to open my mind and even my heart to exploring other options and avenues. So I started to deep dive and I found podcasts. Wiz was one of my first podcasts that I ever came across, which was
Really?
so great. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like you're almost an audience of one. There were so many things that he had said that were just driven home, and that I filled out an application. Through that application process, I ended up, just exploring what my options were. I had, a psilocybin option, which I didn't know anything about. I didn't know anything about any psychedelics, honestly. So I started to just do a lot of homework and research. And my first journey was with Root and Wisdom, and I sat with Iboga.
Mhm.
And it was by far the most transformative experience of my life, that I was so hesitant and afraid. Even my therapist was trying to talk me out of it. People, they just were not in support of it because not many people really knew.
Right.
And of course, the stigma is associated with it. And, it's a gateway and it's a portal and it's going to do all these things. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, it was the furthest thing from any of that. And like, on the contrary, it brought me closer to God. I've never felt so connected with our creator and spirit and source as I did than in the medicine. Right.
What would you
And
say to somebody that was doing their homework and considering the possibilities that are out there, when it comes to this type of experience? What would you say is important for them to look into uh, before they get involved with an organization or a ceremony or something like ibogaine or psilocybin?
right. I would say absolutely do your own research. You know,
Mhm.
know the medicine that you're working with, know who you're working with. That I think is, there's two people that I feel comfortable doing this with. That's, you guys with Sacred Warrior Fellowship and what Wiz has created with Susie, and you, I think, is beautiful. And then, with Troy, and there's so many people that are doing these things, and it's beautiful, but just really know who you're going to sit with,
Yeah.
and let the medicine call to you. I never knew what that meant. I
Yeah.
never knew what iboga meant either, or, taking a psychedelic assisted therapy session, so to be open, and really follow your heart and your gut with what feels right for you. And
Yeah.
and don't keep drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right. You had mentioned when we spoke yesterday that when you heard about the clinical ketamine trials that were becoming available through the VA, you inquired and you were turned down. What happened with that?
I was. So I was, actively involved in therapy. I've been trying to heal and do the right thing and check the right boxes. And I had asked the psychiatrist that I was dealing with at that time if she could please just put me in for this program, that I felt like I had exhausted all efforts. I am really feeling hopeless at this point. I don't know what's left. I've done EMDR, that was helping a little bit. I've done all these different modalities with therapy, and this was approved. I hear great things about it. It kept popping up in all of these, searches that I was doing. And even though it was still synthetic, it was still providing a lot of relief for veterans or first responders. Um, and like that high speed up tempo, because there is no downtime, right? You're just constantly ready to go. So I had asked about the ketamine program and I was denied because I had not exhausted enough SSRI options.
And
And
how
I
long had you already been in therapy and going through all of the pharmaceutical options that they were giving you?
Years, like over close to 10 years.
Oh
I
my
was
gosh,
medically
that's insane.
retired in December of 16.
But
So that whole
that wasn't
time.
long enough, and you hadn't exhausted enough SSRI options over the course of 10 years.
Correct.
Meanwhile, we have data coming in demonstrating how someone like you would have been a perfect candidate for something like psychedelic therapy or ketamine therapy.
Right. 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 And I was literally saying, you have to be very careful too with what you say, right? You don't wanna say too much. You don't want to say not enough. You're caught in this crossroad. You're trying to heal. You want to heal. You want to get better. You have people like Wiz just talked about in the Senate, that, oh, if you're healed with your PTSD, we're going to take back, your ratings. Some people, people are stuck in
Yes.
trauma, right? And
Yes.
like this whole system is just so bass backwards. It is awful. Right?
So how
And
did you take care of yourself during that time, during that 10 years? How did you provide for yourself?
oh gosh, I mean, I think you're in survival mode, truly.
Mhm. Were you
Um
still
I
working?
I was not technically working, but the good Lord has a sense of humor and he blessed me with a retirement package. So at 40 years old, I had a baby. And
Mm.
so I
That was
was
your
a
retirement package?
that was my retirement.
That was your retirement package?
He's a really funny guy, and
I don't
he
think I want
really
that kind of retirement package.
I mean, he really does have a sense of humor,
But
but
that is funny.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you, Caleb saved my life,
Yeah.
I knew he also was the one that brought me full circle into like, this is where we need to stop and we need to break that generation
Right.
curse, right? And we need to
Yep.
come full circle. But so I wasn't working per se, but I was a stay-at-home mom. Which I have a whole new respect for mamas and stay-at-home moms. It's like you don't know what you don't know until you know it or you need to know.
Amen. Right. Right.
So that was a journey in and of itself, and also trying to heal little Jody while I'm raising a mini me. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit,
Yeah.
parenting, especially being in the position that I was. Like I mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally was not okay.
Right.
And I owe that little man a lot of extra love and hug and kisses because, I feel like I was disassociated and just an
Yeah.
angry, mean mom a lot
Yeah.
of that time that I just that breaks me, but that was also what inspired me to do what I did, right? And embrace the suck because this, I believe, is the greatest mission of all times, no matter what we have done. Like, this is it.
Which embrace the suck for our
Yeah.
listeners is what we named our last, or actually Jodi's ceremony.
Good.
But I want to just commend you for the bravery and the courage and the diligence that I know personally and firsthand that it takes to step up to the plate and do the healing while parenting, while being at home with a baby, while being at home with toddlers. And also now being willing to go a step further and heal yourself of the guilt
Mm,
and the shame that creeps in because of where you were at that time when you had
yeah.
him and where you were up until the time when your greatest healing began to flow and you really started to see changes. I can relate. I understand. My oldest is almost 20 and I was still so broken and stuck in so many cycles and disassociating all of the time and angry. I was in a group with, a sexual abuse recovery group when I was 32.
Mm,
So, about 14 years ago, and my daughters were 2 and, like, 9 months. And when you start going through the healing process, sometimes you are really truly wide open and you're vulnerable. And you're gonna cry. Like you said the other day, you've cried more through this process than you have in your 49 years. You're gonna cry, and a lot of times we wanna hold that back. We don't want our kids to see that. We don't want our families to see that. But I really do commend you for being willing to go through this process while parenting because it is not easy to do.
mm,
It's not easy to do. Parenting is challenging in and of itself,
right.
but parenting while disassociated and while dealing with anger and grief is just going to end up being another bucket of things that the next generation has to deal with. And so by you dealing with this, you are already breaking, like you said, those
Yeah.
generational patterns. And I know you told me that there was a moment that that really became apparent to you that I've got to do this. And you
Yeah.
said that your son, who's 10 now,
He will be. He'll be 10 in March.
yeah.
Yes.
So you said he was what, 5 or 6, and you'd come home one day. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So this one day in particular, I was coming in from the back of the house and I came in the back door and Caleb was probably about 6 or 7. And there's these, little curtains that are draped down to the floor. He hid behind the curtains. So as I came in the back door, he jumped out from the curtains and he grabbed me and he's like, "Hey, mom." And my immediate reaction was to just swing and, step back and I connected with him and we made eye contact and I saw him look at me with the same eyes that I remembered looking at my father. And that wrecked me. Like immediately stopped me dead in my tracks and once I had this like, "Oh shit" moment, he's okay. Grabbed him, pulled him in, and just loved on him, and I'm so sorry, buddy. But I knew at that moment, like this stops right here.
And amen. I
Yeah,
remember it brings tears to my eyes because it's just so it's so many people's stories. So many women, so many parents that are doing their best
yeah,
and they love their families, they love their children, and I know your parents loved you, right? But they didn't have the tools and nobody was speaking up back then
no,
because it also, also 20, 30 years ago, it was normal to cover the things up, right? Because
right,
the family reputation mattered. And
right,
and so there really wasn't freedom to talk about these things. So these generational patterns are just naturally passed down. And I believe that we are in a time where people are changing that. And I'm so
yeah,
thankful. But I had a moment very similar where, I I lashed out at my kids. I This was before I had really gone on my second wave of healing. I had already been really knee deep in church and ministry, and I'd done so much incredible changes in my life through that and through therapy. And I know you know what that means, like waves of healing. You go through a decade
Mhm.
and you peel back some layers, right? But then you have those moments where you go, "Oh my God, like look, it's still so deep. It's still freaking there. And how do I get to it? Like, how do I
Right.
get to that? I've done so much work, but I'm still so broken in so many ways." And I lashed out at my kids one day, and I know that look. I know that look you're talking about and how it just breaks your heart when you look at your child and they're afraid of you.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And we want our children to be able to come to us and to
Mhm.
trust us and
Right.
to want to run to us. And when we are that wounded animal that is just latching out in self protection,
Mhm.
and reacting to everything, we can't be that for them. We can't be
Right.
that confidant. We can't be that trustworthy person that we aspire to be. So that's why the healing is imperative. That's why the
Yeah.
healing is important. And that's why, you know, being able to find resources in the community, because not everybody has a family that they can count on. Not everybody can call their parents to come babysit for them while they go to therapy.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
mean, I was constantly bartering and trying to, and you don't wanna leave your kids with just anybody
Right.
either. So
Right.
being able to find networks in the community, it's not been easy for people to
Mhm.
do. And, but having places pop up like yours and like Sacred Warrior Fellowship where we can start making connections, start bringing light around, you know, the normalization of healing as
Yeah.
adults, as
Right.
grandparents, because I know some of our people that have come through ceremony are even at the point where their kids have grown up, become adults, and they feel like, well, it's too late. I can't repair those relationships. And that's
Yeah.
not true because you may not be able to go back and pull those breaks up and do the healing while your kids are still at home, which like you and I have been able to do. And that's a huge blessing. Some people can't. And they're listening to this conversation and they probably feel like, it's too late. It's definitely not too late. And you
Mhm.
can, when you heal yourself, you energetically change timelines. You change the trajectory of your life, which ultimately does change the energy of the
Yes.
people in your past and your future, and very well could possibly open up doors for reconciliation in those relationships. But I know what that feels like to see that look of terror on your kid's face and realize if I don't do something now,
Yeah.
if I don't do something drastic, and if I don't commit to myself now, then I am going to just hand over all this shit to my kid and
Yeah.
just let them deal with the same wounds only on top of theirs,
Right. And
right?
then so the story goes, right?
And then so the story goes, and so yet again, it's like, pat yourself on the back, Jody. I mean,
Mhm.
not having the tools and having been in a therapeutic process for 10 years that did not get you anywhere has got to feel absolutely daunting and hopeless. Having gone from being this bubbly, funny personality that everybody called Donkey, right? I was getting such a kick out of that when I was talking to you before the show, everybody. That is her call name, Donkey. Because what I'm finding out about Jody is that she was the one that brought the smile to everybody's face, and nobody could walk by without getting a joke cracked on them. And it's like to see people suffer and go through an entire decade with no support, no help, no answers, lose their complete identity, and then wake up one day as a mom getting ready to hand all that over to the next person, and we're going to call that our service to the country. And that
Mm.
is heartbreaking, but you are a cycle breaker, and you decided that day that you were going to do something, and you were going to do something drastic. You're going to take this process in your own hands,
Yeah.
and you just started researching online.
I did. I started looking online and watching, YouTube videos and fell into some podcasts, and it was a rabbit hole. And it was so exciting though to see that there was all these other options and modalities that I used to always think was so woo-woo and so
Yeah.
taboo and so like, oh, it's sorcery and it's this and it's that. And it's like, oh my gosh, have we had it wrong all along, right? So it opened Pandora's box, and I fell into the Iboga journey, and I fell into, the Sacred Warrior Fellowship community. And I mean, truly, it has been a pivotal, it's not even a 180, it is 360 of
Yeah.
just coming full circle with, picking up where we left off, even in journeys. And it's so different than medicine. This with you was, I said, it was the most beautiful, brutal beatdown, but it gave me everything I needed. Not what I
Yeah.
wanted, what I needed, big difference.
That's
Mm.
interesting. What would you say are the big comparisons then between I've never sat with ibogaine or iboga. What would you say was the big comparison between the ceremony styles and your experience?
I think,
The
well,
big
the
difference?
comparison. Oh, okay. Well, either or, the comparisons and difference, very Iboga, I felt was, I mean, it rocked me in ways that I really felt like I died into my old self. My
Yeah.
ego shattered, all those things that used to define or defile me, like a rank or a title or a position. None of that mattered. Like, there's no rank on this chest, it is just Jodi. There's no title, there's nothing to prove. Iboga brought me to a place of a perspective of like a 50,000-yard view of looking at things and seeing things for what they really were, not what I was getting stuck in, right? Like, it was I think over the years, you get stuck in certain scenes or certain situations, and Iboga for me showed me things that I really needed. Don't forget, like, this happened too.
Yeah.
All of this stuff over here, like, this no longer serves you. This was
Yeah.
also part of your life. Like, don't forget who you are. Don't forget, the good. Um, this psilocybin journey kind of picked up where I left off, but it was very, it was very prominent of the scenes where, Iboga, I was doing a lot of figuring out. This was, I was in it, and I felt like even it was a delayed reaction too, if Wiz remembers, I was kinda, like, sitting around just waiting for this to happen, and finally, I just said, "I'm just gonna lay back and see," and the music just took me right in, and it was fast. I went into this beautiful door, this massive door, and into an eye of, like, revelation proportion. It was like this wall of eyes, and, um, and it journeyed me as the music went, and I saw and I felt everyone with me. It connected me with things, we set our intentions
Right.
going into it, and you had asked us just prior to going through, to try to dial that down into one word, and my word was truth. I wanted to seek truth, and know I had all of these things that I thought wrong or, were pointed out to me with Iboga, and I really came full circle with our journey, that it brought that truth and relevance to the surface. So I got to really see things for what they were, and that journey was so different. It was, um, there was, my purge was tears. I had never cried, like you had mentioned before. I isolated and compartmentalized everything, and for me, I cried for like the first time ever. Um, and I, not only did I cry, I mean, I wept and wailed, and at one point was even in my
So beautiful.
bedroll that was my dad's chest. When I was in the medicine, I was laying on my dad's chest, which I now know was my bedroll, but I just, remember just wailing and weeping and letting all of those years, and even little Jody, to finally have that time to release. That was so incredibly different and so needed. Um, I was not able to allow myself to do that. I get, for whatever reason. and the psilocybin, the medicine allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the music has a part to play in the emotional factor in our journeys. Again, I've never been to an iboga or ibogaine ceremony, so I don't know how different they are when it comes to music. Can you give some insight into the difference in the feel of the ceremonies?
Yeah, the music, was very different in some ways, but also very the same, very similar.
Okay.
You start in our iboga journey, we started with the the Bwiti tribal music.
Mhm.
And, Troy even says in the beginning, "I'm not gonna turn it down. You're not gonna like it. I'm not changing it. It is what it is." But it's very tribal, and then you're kind of in the thick of it with your journey, and then how the music affects you later on, it transitions into this beautiful, Native American, Navajo flute. It's peaceful. You hear Ram Dass and sitting by the fire and all these beautiful tones and frequencies like we do in the playlist that you use. So it's
Mhm.
a transitional period, but just like you said, the music really carries you through
Yeah.
this journey with your playlist and even you playing
Yeah.
completely guided and directed my journey. Like you brought me through so many different scenes and parts of that journey.
My pleasure, darling. It was so
Yeah.
much it's so incredible,
Oh my
and all
gosh.
and for our listeners, like Jody mentioned in ceremony, I'll bring the flute or my guitar, and if the energy is right and the scene calls for it, then
Mm,
that's what they'll get. We also work with, specific songs that are created and cultivated for ceremonial work. They hold a certain frequency that connects with different
mm,
parts of the body, different parts of the mind, different parts of the soul. It's very, very intentional. Each ceremony is actually customized. I personally customize each ceremony. Our team also contributes to what songs are played based on what they're feeling is coming up for them as they pray and they seek wisdom for each individual ceremony. So there's always something special, always something unique. And I just, I'm every single time we finish a ceremony and I call my husband and he says, "How did it go?" I'm speechless
mm.
every single time. So, in preparation for attending our Sacred Warrior Retreat, were there any specific things that were more challenging to you this
Mm.
in this experience?
Um, mm, that's a good question. There was in its own way because now I kind of I didn't even peek behind the curtain. I mean, the curtain was open, right?
Mhm.
So now there's all these revelations and new perspectives, and you really see not only yourself but others around you and reality so different. So I was going into this with much greater, stronger intentions, like I knew I want truth. I want to know what is happening. I want to know how to be the best version of myself. I want to know how to lay all this shit to rest. I want to know how to find that balance between mourning their loss. Like we lost a lot of people over the years, right? And living a life worth their sacrifice, right? So like
Mhm.
I knew, including my dad. I'd lost my dad in between this whole mix too. My father passed away 6 months after Iboga, and, like, 6 months like, there's a 6-month trajectory there of, I did Iboga, I had this amazing journey, my dad came through, or, like, I had, all these scenes, or I worked through all these things with Troy, and then he passes away, and then 6 months after that, and dealing with, his loss, I do the journey with you guys. So really coming, like, with not expectations, because I learned that too, you set yourself up for failure when you're walking in, finding that balance of, like, intention and expectation, and being real with myself, like, knowing I have to own my shit, and I'm
Yeah.
about to go into this and it's going to show me everything, right? Or
Yeah.
God willing, it's going to show me everything, right? And just being open and letting go of that control, because I realized how much of a stronghold I was having on things, because up here I really didn't, and just
Yeah.
that whole being, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Mm.
Was like,
Yeah.
it just,
Did you
yeah.
find it difficult being in a group setting in the retreat center?
No, normally I would say yes.
Uh-huh.
But the way that you hold that space is so beautiful. And it is so reminiscent too of, even like, you're going through things together. Everybody that was there because they wanted to be, not because
Right.
they had to be. Like that in
Right.
and of itself is a game changer, right?
Right.
And knowing that we are all like-minded, at least in that regard. It doesn't matter, taxes, politics, whatever, none of that mattered. We were there for one mission, right? And we were doing it collectively. And I think that's the game changer too, with, people being able to do tough stuff,
Yeah.
is because of the men and the women to the left and the right of you is what, gets you through it. So
Great point.
we were in it, right? We were in it
Great
and we
point.
were there for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Great point. 100%.
Yeah, being with a group. I loved our group. I think we really bonded with our group. I hope and pray that every retreat, every ceremony has that camaraderie that we did. Because I mean, I don't our text threads even, are
Yeah.
like through the roof. I don't know how Susie and Wiz keep up with that. And maybe God bless them for all the works that they do. But I mean, I love each and every one. And we're not all so connected. We don't all talk all the time every day, but there was such bonds that were formed in that time, that one weekend, that I think we're all gonna really carry full circle, and it was so
Love you guys.
right? It was so
Yeah.
comforting too, um, even to have Denise and I
Yeah.
clicked immediately, just the fact of having another firefighter that was like, "Holy shit, I see you," "I get it," and she's still in it, right? So to be able to pay that forward and be like, "Oh, girl, hang on, like, this is the best is yet to come," you know?
Yeah.
It was so great to have that group.
Absolutely. And you even mentioned to me that, you heard some of the negative opinions that circle about around these types of things, especially from religious groups that, that it's not of God, that it's, a slippery slope, that it's demonic or it's
Right.
witchcraft. And you said that this journey actually revived your relationship with God and brought that to a whole nother level. And I just think that's incredible. I hear that from 9 out of 10
Mm,
people, you
yeah,
know? And so now you've got this newfound faith.
mhm.
It's also so amazing because your son is still young. Our sons are the same age.
Aw,
Your son is still so young, and he has a mom that can love her life and can see herself fulfilling
mm,
purpose and expose your heart and be present with
yes,
him.
yes,
You are a miracle, and
mm,
what you've given your son and the next generation is invaluable, and I'm so freaking proud of you and all of my other brothers and sisters that have come and
mm,
that have trusted us with your hearts and trusted us with your stories, and I know that after spending so many years burying these things and just not knowing how it's gonna be received when you open up and you say that you're hurting, um, more and more and more of you and of us are coming out of the woodworks and we're saying that tough people do heal
yeah,
and tough people can be soft. Strong people, heroes can cry.
mm.
and need to.
Yeah.
And we come together now to create and continue to cultivate an atmosphere and a community that normalizes it and makes it safe. And thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for being a part of this with us. And thank you for inviting us to grow together because we are eventually going to do something together up at your retreat center. And for anybody that wants to get in touch with you, please tell us where your retreat center is located and how they can get in touch with you and anything else that you want to plug. Go for it.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. This has been so, so amazing, Teresa. So Last Call Ranch and Retreat, we're located in Garcon Point, which is in Milton, Florida. We are all the way up in the northwest quarter of the Panhandle. So we like to say that we live in LA. It's Lower Alabama. Um,
Okay.
but Last Call Ranch and Retreat.org will be stood up soon. It's all still so new. We're still working on our website and development. But we have a Facebook page for right now, just to get started. And yes, I look really forward to doing so much more and having, the ranch and the retreat side that we can bring a lot of our brothers and sisters back to this beautiful place of wholeness and wellness. Like Wiz says, we are not broken.
That's right.
We just need to get back to the basics and remember who we are before all this stuff, took us. So
That's right. And your journey was never for nothing. And none of your
yeah,
journeys to all of our listeners today are for nothing. And there truly isn't anything that you've ever done that has not been forgiven. All you have to do is allow yourself to believe that somewhere deep inside, there is a part of you that is still worthy of that love, still worthy of life, still worthy of a life that feels fulfilling and purposeful.
right.
And we just want to encourage you to not count yourself out. And if you're one of those individuals like Jodi was that has just been in the system for years and years, or even a short period of time, I would encourage you to do your homework, do your research. And if you feel called to take the spiritual journey for your healing, there are numbers and numbers and numbers of warriors that are going before you in this process and coming out on the other side to say, come on, it's worth it. Let's go. This is the way. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.